a gummy bear.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Game Mess Mornings with me, Jeff Grubb, your host from giantbomb.com. Thank you for tuning in. In this episode, we're going to be talking about one of the year's best games potentially going to Switch 2 and yet another major price increase possibly on the horizon. It's going to be a good one, though, because we've got Addy, EposVox on the show. Addy, how are you doing?
Doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing great. Yeah. Like I was telling you right before we started the show, busy, lots going on, but mostly good problems to solve. But happy to be hanging out with you. I do have an initial question to kick us off.
Okay.
Me and Jan are still using our Goxlers with that open source interface now. How much time do we really have left on these things, honestly?
You're good for now.
Okay.
Until you want to change anything or make it better, and then you're going to run into a wall, basically.
Yeah, that. I do get that sense that I think I keep putting it off because I'm like, if I want, like, this has been a nice all-in-one package, but I recognize its limitations and from the beginning. And I'm like, if I want to do more than this, it is going to be a whole other thing I'm going to have to get into. To be fair, that open source software has solved a lot of the problems.
It is great, and
it's really nice.
Super stoked it works out of the box on my Linux rig too. Like, you can just do just about whatever with it. But it's one of those things, like, when you first get to set up with the GoXLR, you're like, this is amazing. And the second you start getting that ear to like nitpick things and you can't fix anything. You realize that it's built to do this one thing for this one like market, and then that's it.
That's it. Yep, absolutely. So the reason I asked you that question is that's definitely a space that you spend a lot of time in, streaming technology and stuff like that. Why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself if they're unfamiliar with EposVox?
I've been teaching people how to live stream, do what we're doing, and make YouTube videos for about 10 years now. I've started out doing like OBS tutorials, Fraps tutorials back in the day, that kind of stuff. And so mostly I teach tech and streaming and content creation, and then I have a gaming channel where I do sometimes hopefully thoughtful thoughts on retro gaming and like contextualizing where we are now and that kind of stuff.
How do you feel about the overall like ecosystem of people making content and streaming and stuff right now? It definitely seems, I guess, precarious, but it's always been precarious. But how do you feel about it?
It's a train wreck at the moment. It's one of those things where like it's reached kind of critical mass in terms of popularity, mainstream appeal, and that comes with a lot of personality conflicts with, it used to be the inside thing for geeks or whatever, whereas now it's a lot more. You get the people that do the popularity contests in any context are very much present, and things were going great the past few years now with everything going on. The economics and the algorithms behind it, especially with YouTube's new leadership, are not fun at the moment.
No. Yeah. It's it was always challenging, but now it feels like it's almost actively working against a lot of people in a lot of ways. It's difficult to figure out for sure. All right, though, we got plenty to talk about, so let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings. I need to fix that there. Or find the RSS feed on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. And of course, a lot of people are going to giantbomb.com/join to get the ad-free version. If you are having any trouble getting the ad-free RSS feed, let us know, on the Discord and the forums. Someone's going to be there to help you. We'll get that all sorted. But shout outs to everybody who supported us so far. We've gone independent, and we're going to keep doing this thing with your help, please. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with nearly 5 years in, PS5 sales remain neck and neck with the PS4. This is from Andy Robinson over at VGC. Nearly 5 years into its life, PlayStation 5 sales remain neck and neck with its predecessor, PS4, and its latest results covering the 3 months ending March 31st, 2025. Sony said it sold 2.8 million, that's 2.8 million PlayStation 5 consoles for a total of 18.5 million for the fiscal year. That is down from 20.8 million in the previous fiscal year. That means PS5 has now sold 77.8 million units total since its launch in November 2020, just over 1 million units behind where the PS4 was when you line up the life cycles, basically line up the launches. There, it's about 1 million behind. That is, statistically basically even. Addy, the thing here though is Sony does predict it'll sell fewer PlayStation 5s through the next fiscal year than the PS4 did in the equivalent time. So they don't expect it to catch up to the PS4 at this point. And obviously, I think we can point to a million reasons why, including something we're going to have to talk about in a moment on the show, prices and price increases. I think if people were waiting on the sideline for this thing to become more affordable, well, they've just given up, right?
Yeah, that's always the kicker with the mid console lifespan, like refresh. We've had slim consoles and pro consoles, and with the PS5, we got the Pro, and it did not push prices down. And I'm very curious how that will affect continued adoption rates with regards to like we're finally seeing that leap where we're not getting as many cross-generation games. We're still getting a lot, but like they're finally starting to cut off the tail. And I think people are going to be holding on more than ever. So I'm curious if anyone who is flexible enough in their production pipeline that maybe we're going to go exclusive for next gen or this gen, where maybe still going to make a PS4 compatible version at this point.
Yeah, I think for a lot of developers, they just looked around and were like, it doesn't make any sense not to make this game for PS4. It's plenty powerful for what we're doing. Obviously, you're right. We're talking about that upper echelon, maybe it's not the right word, but that game that probably shouldn't be compatible with the last gen, but still just doing that because it makes sense financially. Now, let's go over all the caveats that are always important to put out here. The PS5 was definitely supply constrained early on, so it did fall behind the PS4 specifically because of that. But then it also had a huge amount of demand throughout the pandemic, so they were able to make up a lot of that during that period of time. I think another caveat worth pointing out is, this is the PS5 sort of boxing against itself because the Xbox has not presented much of it, much in the way of competition. I think the Xbox One Series X is a very good console to use. I enjoy it, but no one's going around being like, you should definitely get that instead of a PS5. When people talk about getting a console, if you're out there in the regular audience and you say, what should I get? Everyone's pointing you to a PS5. So there's it feels like there should be like a lot of like tailwind pushing the PS5 ahead. And yet it's kind of just even with the PS4. Do you think part of that is this sort of macro trend of, sure, us nerds who grew up with this stuff are showing up and we are spending a lot of money on it, and when we're a big enough audience that these corporations can't ignore us, but we're not necessarily being replaced by a lot of younger people kind of playing games in the same way we are?
I really think that's it. I'll point to your own video about the Xbox price increases where it's very much they are out of new people to sell consoles to for the most part, and convincing you to upgrade over their previous version with the price increases. I think they know that it's not a compelling offer in all situations. And you mentioned like if you the Xbox versus PlayStation, if you tell a normal person buy a console, I think honestly for the past few years it's just been Switch. Like
yeah, that's true.
It's hard. It's been harder to have that conversation when you are talking to someone who wants the big bombastic on your big TV games. But realistically, like the console offering from the Switch has been so compelling at such an affordable price that we're seeing so much shift to Switch and PC instead of Switch versus PlayStation versus Xbox. That to me it is very impressive with the stock shortages that we had early on, with how much like every conversation was, I really want a PlayStation 5 and I cannot find one.
Right.
That it caught up as much as they did. Like that speaks a lot to not only was the demand there, but they kept people like fed enough that they kept coming back. They didn't just go elsewhere. And maybe that speaks to how not compelling the Xbox offering was that people could not get PlayStations and they just waited until they could. And I think people still waiting, like you said, for the price to drop, especially with the Pro coming out. You kind of would expect it to happen. You're not getting that, and the Pro is just not where people are going to buy a console these days, price wise. It's really hard. I want to see more people getting into gaming. I want to see
yes
the hobby spread. Like that's why we do what we do. We talk about these things, but I can't convince someone to go spend $600 for a single game to then spend, a few hundred other dollars into the other. Like it's a really hard standing point. Games are incredible, but it's like, if you're not there already, how do you get into it?
It's a really high barrier to entry. I think higher than ever, and it might continue to get worse. Obviously, the price increases that have already happened are noticeable. You talk about the Pro. That was such an inflection point where, like, last generation, we got the PS4 Pro, and it was very much like this. I remember talking to someone from Sony who basically just said, like, this is a way for us to keep the price where it was at launch. We're just going to replace the original PS4 with this, and it's for a smaller audience, but that most hardcore audience, the one that would pay, we know has paid this price before, they'll pay it again for something that's significantly better. And it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. Everything, the whole stack moves down. And then the PS4 standard went on to sell very well after that point, like for the rest of the generation. And, we've come to a point where that's obviously not happening. And I think, tariffs aside, we'll talk about, there's tariffs to talk about here as part of the news because stuff continues to move there. And Nintendo's talked about it a little bit. But, before the tariffs, like, we were getting price increases. Before the tariffs, we were not seeing any more price cuts. So that was just becoming the norm. A lot of that is just the way that the components seem to be sourced don't really lend themselves to the way of cutting prices the way they once did. Another part is I think these companies have realized that this audience will kind of pay more and more and more and keep showing up because we don't feel like we can go anywhere. I think I have retreated to PC and Switch in a lot of ways, but I'm still getting these consoles for the most part. And I know that sort of stubbornness is a big part of the way we all play games, and I think they're just taking advantage of that. So it's those two factors of, the way they make things doesn't necessarily lend itself to cutting prices, and they know they can really come for us because we're not going to go away if the price goes up 10 to 30%.
Yeah, and platform hopping is just a hard concept for a lot of people to get. Like, I think if it were easier, if games were inherently just cross-platform, like you bought a license and you could play it wherever or whatever, it would be a more compelling offering. But if you already have a massive PlayStation library, especially with the backwards compatibility that has been pushed forward from PS4 to PS5, you can't just abandon that. Like, if you're trying to convince someone to stop buying it, it's like, okay, I have 15, 20, 30, 200, however many games you have across both platforms, and will continue to be playable forward. You want me to rebuy those? And, like, you can keep your older console, but that means you're still not getting any money towards your new system, be it Xbox or PC or whatever. Like, people get really locked in now on the platform, whereas it felt like, especially with how cheap games could get in earlier generations, it was a lot easier for people to just, like, dump their console. Like, I remember working at GameStop and people would just bring in, like, their PS1 and their PS2 and just dump their whole library and jump over to Xbox for a little bit. And then they dump because they could get whatever games they wanted to grab for like $5 or $10, and the consoles were just everywhere.
Yep.
And I think it's a double-edged sword of, like, there are a lot of cool games, I think we'll talk about in a minute, that are coming up for PlayStation that will be compelling, but there are so many premium experiences you can get right now on a home console in terms of the big budget games that are compelling, but they don't feel like, if you try to upsell a PlayStation 5 Pro and you're like, yeah, you can get better graphics, higher frame rates, whatever, it doesn't feel compelling. But at the same time, if you try to sell someone now on a PS4, if they've been in the weeds, and because that used to be the thing, is like, okay, we're not gonna do the Xbox quote, but, like, if you don't want a PS3 right now, grab a PS2 for $50. You got so many games to play forever. But now there's so much bigger, like, FOMO for the new Doom, the new Death Stranding, the new Ghosts of Yotei. Like, you're missing out on a lot more, it feels like. And so even though you can't upsell anymore, no one wants to settle for less either. And
yeah, it's a kind of a miserable position in a lot of ways, where it's like, oh yeah, the business model of gaming has really encroached on the enjoyment of gaming in a lot of ways, and that's been very frustrating. As you point out, let's see here, there is a bunch of games. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, Ghost of Yotei, Marathon, What else did they have for this year? Oh yes, Death Stranding 2 is coming out soon. And then they were looking forward to a big pop with GTA 6. Obviously, that's moved to next year. And then Intergalactic is a couple years off. That's the new one from Naughty Dog. So they got plenty of stuff that should be getting people's attention. But nothing really is going to change the story probably until GTA 6, really. Maybe Intergalactic. All right. Sticking with this general theme, PS5 could get more expensive as Sony considers plans to deal with tariff impact. This is from Darren Bonthus at GameSpot. Sony is bracing itself for a $680 million impact from U.S. tariffs, and to compensate for those potential losses, the PlayStation manufacturer might pass the increasing cost to its customers. During the company's earnings call, Sony CFO Lin Tao told investors that price increases on its hardware are being considered, although PS5 console was not mentioned specifically. CEO Hiroki Todoroki did mention that PS5 console manufacturing could be moved to the U.S. Most of its maybe he said could be. That's crazy. It won't be. Most of its consoles are produced in China and are subject to a 30% tariff for now, as this would be an efficient strategy to avoid being caught in the crossfire of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. Yeah, good luck with that. So this is something I think we kind of knew when those worldwide price increases happened, things that weren't necessarily directly related to the tariff, although I think that was definitely in mind when they were raising the prices in just about every other territory other than the United States, and they were just waiting on raising the price here because they didn't know exactly how much to raise the price by because the tariffs were such a moving target. They are still, although we're in this weird 90-day holding period where the tariffs are only, quote unquote, only 30% on China. So yeah, I still think a price increase for the PS5 is incoming for the United States, which is just another thing that is going to make it more difficult to keep up with the PS4, obviously, and put up those barriers of entry that we were talking about, right?
Yeah. So I got a question for you.
Yeah, shoot.
Do you think the shift to focus on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus subscriptions instead of purely hardware sales or purely direct game sales is having a negative impact here? Because used to, it was always you sell the hardware at a loss, make it up in games, but they are now doing games at a loss through the subscription effectively and not being able to subsidize it as much. Do you think we're seeing a weird almost feedback loop of they cut their funding for their hardware here and now they're having to make it up, but then if they're not selling the hardware, they're not going to sell the games on the hardware?
Yeah,
I'm worried that that's a cycle.
Yeah, I definitely think that they notice the pressure from that game sale subscription side a little bit when they are pricing the hardware. I think you're right that is feeding back in to a certain extent. Now, the way those subscriptions work, I'm sure they probably do come out positive in terms of average lifetime value per user, where they're looking down the line. But in the moment, at any given time, they are definitely worried about, well, this could slip in a direction that is going to make it feel like we're going to take a hit. So we have to keep everything floating as high as it possibly can in terms of our average, retail price or whatever. So yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it. I think that these companies are also they are looking 20 years into the future and being like, that is a big unknown in terms of, are we going to be able to make the shift to whatever gaming is going to look like when a lot of these console gamers are aging out at a certain point. And so we have to make as much money now as we possibly can to be able to weather any possible transition that we're not prepared for. So yeah, that then we speak to Sony's other businesses, which are, not in shambles, but they're definitely, a lot of them are in much rougher shape than PlayStation. So PlayStation has to sort of lift that entire ship at a lot of points. So it has to make as much money as possible. Now, the good news there for them is it is making a lot of money. It's, they did report their earnings. It was $2.8 billion in profits, essentially operating income. And that's really, really good. That gets up almost 50%, around 45% from last year. So they are figuring things out in terms of making money. But I think they continue to be like, well, yeah, but we're leaving a lot on the table because we don't have the big live service game or whatever. And in the meantime, we're not going to take any hits that we don't have to. And these people keep showing up for our console at this price. So we should just keep it as high as we can. And a lot of that is also strategic positioning, right? So when the PS6 does come out, they can compare that to the current price of whatever the PS5 will be at that time. And then when they need to charge $700 for the base version of that, it feels more justified. So there's just a lot of angles that they're considering, and price increases feel like they were always on the table even before the tariffs. Now they feel like a guarantee.
Yeah. Will we get our E3 moment where then Xbox comes out on the stage and says $299?
I think they will go even more expensive at this point. That's the actual new E3 moment that we get.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. Yeah, let's do this next one because it's still on this topic. U.S. slashes tariffs on Chinese small parcels to 30%. This is from Oscar Antonin Docal from Game Reactor. The latest news on the United States and China. The United States has recently announced a significant reduction to its de minimis tariff on low-value Chinese shipments, lowering it to 30% for direct-to-consumer postal packages. So this is the thing that makes like things like Shein and what's the big one that everyone loved, the cheap Temu. Thank you. Yes, things like Temu work because people can buy up to like $800 worth of stuff. And it was not necessarily going to be hit by many, if any, tariffs coming into the United States as long as it was shipped as a small parcel. That enabled those business models to have very, very aggressive profit margins, and people love that stuff. 30% is still a lot. They're just, we say they're cutting it. It was up to 145% or something like that. So I guess it is a cut from that. But this is good news for kind of everything that they might ship from China. That's not going to necessarily be a PS5 because those are going to come over on large freighters and things like that. But your FPGA consoles and things like that, your Misters, those might be able to skirt by with just a again, quote unquote, just a 30% tariff. So that's some good news, but it's a 90-day pause. This stuff could change as well. Boy, Addy, I'm glad I'm not in the business of trying to make hardware in China and bring it to the United States as my small business. A lot of those guys I just completely admire. They're doing such cool stuff. I wish they didn't have to deal with this. What do you think the future of those kinds of businesses are?
That's honestly what I worry about. Everyone focuses on the AliExpress, the Temu, the whatever, and like, sure, we could all do without those in our lives. Like, yes,
that'd be fine.
But it's the like you said, the small businesses, like the RetroTink, like everyone was up in arms about the RetroTink 4K's price, and then there was a cheaper one that was eventually made. They can't keep getting made cheaper when these things keep happening. And then even the individual like makerspace, like Adafruit and all of these places where you get like Raspberry Pi boards and like your own components to build stuff. These have been dirt cheap because of the pretty flexible policies so far. And it will be a mostly unsustainable business model at this point, because if you need to pay an extra 30 or 140% for what was a $30 part for your little build, you're not going to be able to do that or scale that. And I obviously, eventually these things will be figured out, but I worry how much we're going to lose along the way of businesses that just can't sit it out for this long. Like, I really worry about that space, because we could all say bye to Temu and live better, but we may not get, especially in the retro gaming scene, so many products are made from custom designed PCBs printed cheaply in China, imported over, even if they're open source. Like, there's a lot of retro stuff that's open source, and it's like, okay, but you're still going to go to what I forget the name of the website. One of those websites that lets you just like print your own PCBs. You upload the specs and you print it. Like, you're not going to be able to do that affordably anymore. Like, that's where I'm worried the most about, and I think it's going to be really hard. Thankfully, the community-driven stuff, where it's your local game, your smaller game business stuff, is very. You can do big group buys. You can everyone can wait, like, especially when it's not that person's full-time job. Like, theoretically, they can wait to ship stuff, and everyone can just hold out on the pre-orders. Like, we all know what's going on, but anyone trying to just sell it to like bigger sellers and get it like shipped on a bigger scale is screwed.
Yeah, I was. I might have told the story on the show before we went on our break. But I got the flippy drive thing.
Yeah,
and I was able, like, my order got delayed, and that this is basically an optical drive emulator that for the GameCube, everybody, and it's the one I ordered was delayed way into August, and then I read their blog post about how they are going to be hit pretty hard by the tariffs, and they're trying not to pass that cost on to anyone who's already pre-ordered. So they basically cut a bunch of contractors that were helping them fulfill orders, and there was just the two of them doing everything 7 days a week, pretty much nonstop. It's just like, yeah, that's So they're already doing as much as they possibly can. There is no more fat left to cut off. If they, if one minor tragedy happens, they could just be done. And so you're right. Like, I worry about losing these companies in this period of chaos. And we get to the other side, and you're right. Things do get figured out. Things go back to some sense of normal, maybe, if we're lucky. And then we look back and be like, man, there are a lot of cool companies doing a lot of cool stuff just because they're super passionate about it have gone away, and we're going to lose a ton. Like, we were like in a little bit of a golden era of these kinds of projects. And so
like 2017 until like 2023, when things started getting funky, was just like this incredible golden age of all these retro projects. And I'm still waiting on my flippy drive, and I've just kind of made peace with the fact that I may not get it.
Exactly. Yeah. I was able to
have to be okay.
I just like reached out and like, does anyone have one extra one? And someone sent me this one. So yeah, I got it installed. It's great. I love it. I wish everyone could have one.
Yeah.
All right. Let's actually, you know what? Let's take a break. There's one more tariff story after this from Nintendo, but we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about that right after this. This episode of Giant Bomb is brought to you by Kinda Funny. When we said we were going independent, Kinda Funny was the first group in our inbox because they believe in and want to support independent media, because that's what they are. For more than a decade, Kinda Funny's been making YouTube videos and podcasts about video game reviews, previews, and news, but they also review and rank Marvel movies, Alien vs. Predator movies, and just about every other film franchise you can think of. Kinda Funny is an independent, 11-person talk show network that's live Monday through Friday, starting at 10 a.m. Pacific time. The day starts with Kinda Funny Games Daily, leading into the Kinda Funny Games Cast, usually giving you a rotating podcast like their weekly The Last of Us and Andor spoiler cast. And then later, they stream a game. If you like Giant Bomb, chances are there's a Kinda Funny show that you'll like as well. Check out their full slate of programming on youtube.com/kindafunnygames, twitch.tv/kindafunnygames, and podcast services around the globe. Then subscribe on whatever platform works best for you. Just like Giant Bomb, Kinda Funny only exists because of support from their audience, so give them a chance, whether it's your first listen or your first time in 10 years. All right, we're back. Addy EposVox is with me. I'm Jeff Grubb from Giant Bomb. You're watching Game Mess Mornings. Let's get back into the news. Let's see here. Switch to news with Nintendo warning of substantial negative impact from tariffs. This is from Eddie McHugh at GameSpot. Basically, short version of this is, we were talking about PlayStation mentioning what they think their exposure to tariffs is going to be, something around $680 million. I think that number was. Nintendo's kind of saying something similar. They're saying several tens of billions of yen. And so every 10 billion yen is worth $67 million. So they're talking, $150 million plus, basically. And it very well could be a lot more. Now, when Furukawa was talking about this, Addy, it was during, they were saying they did that calculation when they were expecting Chinese tariffs to be 145%. Once again, they are at least temporarily down to 30%. And so that will change things quite a bit. But as I'm going to insist on on reminding people 30% is high on its own. When we were first talking about tariffs, we were like, man, that'd be crazy if it went up to 30%. So now here we are, kind of being grateful that it's down to 30%. These companies are just going to have to continue to navigate this chaos, right? We all are, but especially if you're trying to launch a new system in 2025. Like, you just have no choice at a certain point but to pull the ripcord, right?
Yeah, and I think especially when you're this close to release and it's a whole new system and whatever, you're not gonna try to wiggle through the lines of like, all right, this month it's 30%, next month it's 200. Like, you're just gonna go for the biggest number you think it's gonna be that will help you absorb it. And like, even if it gets whittled down to 30 for a bit, like, you're still gonna be eating the 145% projection. Like, yeah.
Yep. So it's I think this is also Nintendo keeping price increases on the table. They didn't increase prices after the tariffs were initially announced. They've now said multiple times that they weren't taking into consideration these Trump tariffs, as they, when people ask them about it, it's like these tariffs that people were talking about now, we never even thought about these. We were thinking about all this other stuff. It's like, yeah, for sure, I get that, because you have to be able to say when you increase the price later, it's because of these tariffs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess if if this price does go up, when do you think that could happen? How much do you think it would be? Like, what can they get away with here?
I don't know how they get away with much more, honestly.
It's
like
tough, right? It feels already maxed out in a lot of ways.
Right. Like getting the Switch spread so much after they had their own supply chain issues at the start too, but like they spread so much because everyone could get them. I mean, that was the same thing with the Wii. Like every household could have 1 or 2 Wiis because they were everywhere. And that is how they built up this base. And I don't think trying to milk them for a $600 handheld is going to work out. What I have been expecting, especially with the games lineup they've shown off so far, which is lacking some major heavy hitters, is I think they are banking on cranking it up as far as they could go. I can't imagine like 600 would be the cap. Like who's going to buy it after that point? Like,
right.
But as they project towards that direction, I think they are banking on the core, like true Nintendo fanboys, and for lack of a better word, and the people who are going to be really invested in the social ecosystem, because they're the big bacon game is Mario Kart. They've got all the webcam accessories. They're cranking up the pricing on the accessories already. Like they want that person that is going to do the social stuff, which will help spread word of mouth, help pressure friends into getting in on the fun.
Right, the network effect. Yeah.
Buy up all of the accessories to kind of add in some of that extra buffer. And then whenever they do have the next big, like Zelda, Mario, Metroid, whatever, that's when they'll start playing with the price a little bit to be like, all right, for this launch, let's try to get you actually in the door now that you've seen all your friends playing Mario, and they have the new download feature like the DS had, where like you can start sharing it a little bit. So like I think they're setting up a interesting maneuver to know that they're not selling every single child bearing household a Switch like they did before, but that they're going to plant the seeds so that it becomes a desirable thing. Yes. And then whenever the truly compelling game tool, whatever hits, suddenly we'll see $100 off, and it'll still be way more than you'd ever thought you'd pay for it. But it's like, oh, I can get that. I can get a bundle with an extra controller.
Yep. I think they're going to try to play around with pricing in a lot of different ways. And you're right. I think they're going to be, for lack of a better word, I think dynamic with the pricing. Like they're going to have dynamic pricing for as much as you can get away with a console. That is, been something that they've been sort of scared to do in the past. I think this last generation, where pricing has been a little bit more like, wait, is this going to go up? And then it does. Yeah. And then the consoles tend to keep selling as much as they can after that. I think these companies are maybe a little bit emboldened, and that could easily bite them. But so far it hasn't. So yeah, I think you're right that we'll probably see them be malleable with how they present the price. A lot of that will come down to, hey, does it have a pack-in game or doesn't it? And then how much
trial to the subscription.
Right, exactly. And then they could just kind of move things up and down based on how they are packaging it with other stuff. But when you do the math, you're like, this feels like a little bit of a price increase, and it actually turns out to be exactly that.
I do wonder how it will affect the smaller SKUs, the light version, the 2DS, the OLED possible upgrade model. Like I feel like a lot of people are going to have originally at least expected these additional models that we got with the Switch 1 and prior systems. And I'm wondering if that will even be a viable option, because at this point, well, what a Switch 2 OLED costs. Like theoretically, they could have that ready from the start because they just swapped the screen out. But like, what would that look like at this point?
Yeah, I mean, they probably pop another $50 on top of there, right? And
at least that would
be, so it'd be $500, $550, bundled with a game or something like that. That looks really rough on a store shelf. But yeah, Nintendo loves doing that. That is a way to, again, like, the way the PS4 Pro and the PS5 Pro we were talking about earlier. Oh, these people that we know show up. It's a good way to get us to buy stuff again. But so you're right, though. That does feel more challenging this time around.
I felt when I was watching the original Direct for the Switch 2, I was really, since they obviously didn't have the price in it, I spent the whole thing really confused because it felt like for the first time Nintendo was worried about Steam Deck. Like, if you look at the kind of games they presented and the like massive lineup, you look at the extra features, the focus on specs, like it felt not Nintendo in many ways, and it felt like they were looking over their shoulder a lot at the Steam Deck, which I felt like they did not need to do. I felt like that's very not Nintendo. And I have always said, as much as I love Steam Deck and this new generation of PC handhelds, Nintendo's got nothing to worry about. But then the price hits, and it's like, maybe that's why, like, maybe they've known they couldn't get the price down even before all of this. And they kind of have to worry about Steam Deck now in terms of a compelling price. And obviously, we'll probably see Steam Deck price increases too. We'll probably see whatever.
Yeah.
Although Valve will be more likely to eat it in the short term, at least. But I think maybe they really did need to be scared of the Steam Deck because hardware compelling wise, like price wise, it's just.
Yeah, just the narrative that people could tell themselves, right? It's changed a little bit with that price. I think that immediately became like, yeah, we are going to have to compare this to the Steam Deck in order to sort of make this price make sense. It will seem like a pretty good deal when you compare it to some of these PC handhelds in some ways. But like that is the comparison point. So if those PC handhelds begin making moves, Nintendo could easily look out of touch again. Now, that is going to be for a very a narrower audience.
It is.
But it is still the story I immediately went to for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Sticking with Switch 2 a little bit, Best Buy confirms that some select stores will have Switch 2 stock on release night. This is from Jack Valentine at DualShockers. Basically, for the unlucky gamers who haven't been able to pick up a Nintendo Switch 2 pre-order, you can test your luck at participating Best Buy locations. An email from the retailer says that they will have limited inventory of the Nintendo Switch 2 systems, games, and accessories. It is unclear if they will have both Nintendo Switch 2 SKUs available. So this was just sort of announced. It does feel like these companies do have quite a bit of Switch 2 stock that they were able to put into the pre-order system. And now as they get another wave, Best Buy is going to do, hey, come to the store at midnight and try to get one. Other people will be picking up their pre-orders. We'll have a few more there. I think it's going to be another thing where people will probably have to line up and test their chances, as this is saying. But it does feel like they got quite a bit of Switch 2s into the supply chain. I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah, Best Buy consistently, like this has been a thing with a lot of electronics. Like they've consistently been the one that like you can kind of sneak in and get other stuff. Like there's this camera that I've been trying to order forever that is now completely not shipping to the US because of tariffs. But it was like impossible to find in any camera store whatsoever. But a lot of people were having luck talking to Best Buy's like support chat and being like verifying that they're a real person. They're using it for personal use. They're not trying to resell it, and like actually getting some extra pre-orders. And it's like they seem to have a pretty consistent line on a lot of electronics for a pretty good pre-order stock that a lot of stores are not able to keep up with, which is quite surprising.
Yeah, Best Buy is the one that came out looking good of the pre-order Nintendo Switch 2 thing, right? That's the one everyone was like, at least this one seemed to work somewhat. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that continues. Hope everyone's able to just get their systems right at midnight like they're hoping. And then I hope that some people who haven't been able to get a pre-order are able to go to these midnight launches and get one. That sounds like fun. Right now, I'm like trying to figure out my schedule with the Summer Game Fest. I'm like, where am I actually going to be in LA on the 5th? I think I probably will be, but we'll see. All right. Sandfall Interactive is not ruling out a Switch 2 release of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This is from Jonas Mackey at Game Reactor. Hardly a day has passed since Clair Obscur Expedition 33 was released without us having a reason to return to this fantastic role-playing game that has managed to charm both critics and gamers. It's out now for PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S, and it's also included with Game Pass. Sales have been very good, but releasing Clair Obscur Expedition 33 to more formats would still open up even better results, and maybe that's something French developer Sandfall is considering. In a video interview hosted by Mr. MV, studio head Guillaume Broche says, and this is translated by MP First, well, at this point, considering the success of the game, it kind of changes everything. So clearly, it's too early to say, but we're kind of in a situation where, let's say that there are a lot of opportunities showing up, way too many at once, and we're figuring out what we'll go for and what we won't. But yeah, it's definitely something that could be interesting. Basically, and that was in response to putting the game out on Switch 2. This feels like the kind of thing that, like, when a game pops off like this, it does get the port treatment a little bit faster. I think I'm trying to think. You know what it was. This isn't exactly a port, but like when Cyberpunk was kind of having its reinvigoration, and they like got it ready for the Steam Deck right away. It's like they do that because they know if they do that, it'll pay off. this feels like a similar thing where if they get this thing out on the Switch 2, it's clearly going to pay off. Those audiences feel like they would mesh really well, right?
Oh yeah, I mean JRPGs and handhelds go hand in hand.
Yes.
Even on the PSP, I've just picked up Final Fantasy 1 and 2 for the PSP because these covers were incredible. But like the PSP, the PS Vita, visual novel games and JRPGs are just handheld matches. So it's perfect fit. Obviously, scaling the game to the Switch 2 will be questionable until we see how it handles everything else with all the UE5 things that have been talked to death. But it would be dumb not to at this point. Like that's potential gamers to tap. Although how many people will have the Switch 2 is up for debate. But like, you know, it is a market that you're getting a lot of money. Get your game to more people.
Right. Yeah. I think for the Switch 1 and its launch, there was this huge opportunity. If you were the game there that people were talking about, you know, Golf Story, right? Hey, everyone bought Golf Story because it was just one of those games that was there. And it's a really good game, but it was there and people noticed it and it was able to capitalize on that. It's going to be a little bit more crowded on the Switch 2, right? You probably still want to be there because if you are going to be one of these games that becomes like one of the chosen ones, and, you know, feels like Cyberpunk is on its way to being that because they've talked to the fans in a way. They've been like, we're putting this game entirely on the card because we know it's important to you and we think that matters and all that stuff. And people are like, oh my God, we're gaga for you saying these things. So it feels like Cyberpunk is going to ride this wave. Expedition 33 coming relatively soon. I don't know what that would look like within the next year. Feels like it could also be like, oh man, they're putting out this really awesome game from last year onto this thing. We're going to want to pick this one as well. So yeah, you kind of can't miss that opportunity. Even if it just sells okay on the Switch 2, it's probably going to make quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
All right. The title of the Super Mario Brothers movie sequel has accidentally been revealed early. This is from Chris Scullion at VGC. The title of the sequel to the Super Mario Brothers movie was accidentally revealed earlier by NBC Universal in a press release published on the NBC Universal website for its upfront showcase. The company revealed the name of the second Mario movie in a section on Peacock Streaming, referring to it as Super Mario World, which I think we probably should have been able to guess based on the way the first movie went. Then there's a quote here with all the stuff they have coming. Oh, a new Downton Abbey movie. Excuse me. I love me some Downton Abbey. Super Mario World, right? Yeah, they make a Yoshi-heavy Mario sequel. That makes all the sense in the world. Sorry, I didn't mean to do the world thing. But Addy, are you looking forward to the Mario movie too? Yeah.
It will exist. It will be one of the movies that comes out.
That is definitely how I feel about the first one, where I'm like, this is not, I do not find this offensive or even all that bad, but it is just there.
It's not made for me, and that is okay.
Yes, exactly. But you know, Super Mario World, Yoshi does feel like a good path for them, like having a ton of success again, right? Like, there's no reason to assume that they're not going to be able to recapture a lot of the magic of the first movie, right? In terms of making money.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of room for that kind of like preteen and slightly younger than preteen humor that they do with these movies with Yoshi like eating everyone. Like there's no end of comedy for them to play into that. So like I think it'll do really well.
What is your opinion on Yoshi overall? People seem to have strong opinions on this character. I'm wondering if you're one of these people that does.
Cute little dinosaur. I got you know, I got my wife the yarn one from the Wii U where they had the little thing like it. Appreciate playing through Super Mario World from time to time. I don't have any major like. He's probably my favorite character, but that's not a very high list of.
Okay, so I am jumping over a pit. I'm gonna miss it. I drop the Yoshi into the bottomless pit to survive. Your feelings are like, yeah, that's what you do, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, a double jump in other games, like whatever. Like Crash Bandicoot can double jump sometimes. Like
Yoshi the dinosaur double jump, absolutely. My kids really liked the first Mario movie. They watched that for a while, so it'd be nice to get another one so we can throw it into the rotation. But that's sort of where I'm at with that. Otherwise, okay, last headline I have here. Nintendo SF Store allows customized Switch OLED colors. It has been revealed that, similar to Japan, the newly opened Nintendo San Francisco store will allow gamers to customize their shiny new Nintendo Switch OLED model for a price. You have the option to choose your preferred colors for the Joy-Con, the system dock, and your all-important wrist straps for your Joy-Cons. If this sounds like your cup of tea, then it will set you back $350. As noted previously in this article, this is exactly the same service that Nintendo has offered for the Japanese web store for years. This is pretty cool. Some friends were at this thing. They seemed to think the store was pretty impressive. One thing that they definitely noticed, and I saw Tam posting about this, was that it has like a lot of Metroid merch, where a lot of the other Nintendo stores don't necessarily have that sort of thing. So feels like they are trying to serve a hardcore gaming audience as well as the people, the families that would show up to a Nintendo store. You ever done any like customized hardware from an official channel before, official store?
Not exactly. I did have the privilege of attending the Pokemon Center when it was alive for all 6 months or whatever it was.
Right.
And so I've been lucky enough to see a lot of the world, and that is still because of the age and the generation of Pokemon that was out at the time. Getting to do that and get like a Pokemon downloaded to my cart was like one of my fondest memories in terms of gaming interacting with the real world.
Mm-hmm.
I wish these kinds of stores were more sustainable, that we could get them in more places, because I don't live near anywhere interesting to ever go visit them like on a regular basis. But like, it seems like a really cool service. I immediately worry that like, okay, especially with the markets being how there is, like, are they just going to get bombarded with resellers like grabbing them and running them off? And it's the Build-A-Bear model. Like, it's cool. I am someone who would do that and then play it until the wrap got destroyed, because I don't want to sit it in a box and then never look at it again.
Yeah.
And that would offend a lot of people. It's a really cool thing, and it's interesting to see them. And obviously, like, that's all they could do right now. But it's interesting to see a reason to go buy a Switch OLED as the Switch 2 is coming out. Like, that's honestly kind of smart, because especially since most of the games aren't going to be Switch 2 exclusive yet, like, you're still giving someone a reason to be excited about going and getting a new Switch hardware, which, sure, like, I'm down with that. Like, why not?
Yeah, I like, it's definitely the kind of thing where it's like, if I were in the right mood and I was at that store, there is a chance I walk away having just spent more money on a Switch 1. Like, that's that normally that wouldn't happen, but this could be the kind of thing that might be able to convince me. I guess it would really depend on some of the cool color options. Yeah, the Nintendo store in New York, I think is nice. I've been there a couple times. It's okay. I think the best part about it is just watching any of the videos where people are watching Nintendo Directs. I guess it'll be nice to have another place where people do that, I suppose. But
do you remember? Did you ever have in your malls near you the WB store?
Yes, I did.
Warner Brothers store. Like, it kind of feels like it's that, where it's like, it's the big thing to get kids to come in with like the giant tower of stuffed animals or whatever. Except they always try to do the interactive elements. And I think that makes it like, it almost turns it into like an amusement park kind of thing. Like, it becomes a tourist stop. And so I appreciate that they're doing it, even if realistically, especially as an adult, like, what you're going to get from it is super limited. It at least lets you go and be like, hey, especially as everything is, we were just talking about midnight releases at Best Buy for the Switch 2. Like, that's so uncommon these days. Like, having something where you can go in person and just kind of engage with the hobby a little bit is pretty neat to me.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I think we're always looking for ways to do exactly that, to have a real world tactile sort of thing, or at least I am. And the Nintendo Super Nintendo world has been really cool for that, but I don't always have the capacity or the funds to go to a theme park, and maybe I do want to spend a little bit of money on some merch or something like that.
Yeah,
I think these stores are super cool. I agree. I wish they were just in a few more cities. Maybe put one in the Midwest. That would be cool. All right. That does it for the headlines. We have a poll question from Monday. In fact, let me see if I can find that right here. There we go. All right. So on Monday, we asked giant bomb ? And your options were yes or and forever. And 74% selected and forever. 26% of you said yes. Hey, everybody, we're just glad to be back. We're glad to be doing this stuff. It's been awesome to get this all figured out. There is still a million moving parts to turn this into a business going forward, but so far we've appreciated all the support. We're going to get a bunch of stuff turned on, a bunch of other ways to make money, again, to make this make sense. People have been asking about super chats here on YouTube. Well, yeah, we're going to do those. Looking forward to all of it. So yeah, look, we'll get that stuff turned on and show you new ways of interacting with us all here at Giant Bomb here pretty soon. In the meantime, we have another poll question we'll get to here in a second. Before we do that, though, Addy, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, what you have going on, and all that good stuff?
EposVox, most places for social media handles and things like that. Obviously, my Blue Sky handle is below my picture here. I also have gaming content over on Lost Saves. And yeah, that's pretty easy to find me. I did say I did want to propose some alternate names for the show just to mess with you. I've generated.
Yeah, let's do this. I'm always open to this.
The most compelling and professional names for your morning live show.
Okay.
The Giant Morning Cast.
Of course.
The Morning Giant Cast. The Giant Morning Mess.
Uh-huh.
Independent Morning Mess Cast.
Uh-huh.
The Morning Mess Cast. The Messy Morning Bomb. And most importantly, Jeff Grubb's Giant Mess.
That's just my life. Giant. What was the second to the last one? Giant Morning Mess?
Yes.
I like that one. I like the sound of that. That's good. All right, everybody. If we change the name to any of those, you will all be the first to know. In the meantime, the poll question for today, are you going to a midnight launch for the Switch 2? Yes or no? Just curious. I want to see if people are making plans to do that. I guess, if you pre-order from Best Buy and you're going to go pick it up at midnight, I would count yourself as a yes. That seems like a yes. Or I guess if you're not going to go at midnight, then no. You guys know how to answer questions. All right. Let's see. I got that done. What do we have happening on Giant Bomb? Yeah, we'll get the results of this poll, talk about it on Game Mess Mornings here on Giant Bomb tomorrow. In addition to that, later today, we should have the new episode of Blight Club. It's a new season. Mike Minotti will be starting his game. That is at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to y'all seeing how cool this guy's going to look. Any ideas, Addy, what he's going to play?
I do not.
Yep. No one's gonna see it coming because he's just gonna look so cool. Again, that's 2 p.m. later today, and then tomorrow back for Game Mess Mornings. We'll have Voicemail Dump Truck. There should be some more quick looks popping off here pretty soon. On Friday, we're gonna do a UPF. We're gonna play the Capcom Fighting Collection 2. Probably spend a lot of time in Power Stone. So looking forward to that. All right. With all that out of the way, Addy, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah,
absolutely. We'll make it happen again sometime soon. For now, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for listening. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.
Yummy like a gummy bear.